that land, and they said no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to ask him then?
Yeah. So she just wants to, after this, but it's been told to us by, Commissioner Rodney Graham that the land left over from the development on Watson Julia was not donated or gifted to the town. That's just not the way it happened, and we just wanted to confirm that. How did it really happen?
I don't know if we can hear. This is.
Yeah, there's a motorcycle. But anyway,
Wait, just tell about the donated land of the buffer.
Yeah, the donated land between Beaty and Watson and the Hobbs neighborhood. How did that go down?
Well, we had done I'm a landscape architect and architect before I was a developer, and we had done a site plan of that property at one point and had utilized that frontage, but the town at that point, the town council said they didn't want that being used. They didn't want that frontage being used. So we accepted that and did the layout based on creating that buffer, and it was our property, and we did donate it. We didn't get compensated for that.
And they didn't want the frontage being used for a reason, or just
because it had that was before a lot of the development along Beatty Street, and so it was a fairly green drive, and so at that point, we accepted it and created that buffer, and that's the way it was intended, and that was the way it was represented to us by the town. And Rodney Graham wasn't involved in that point. It's before I knew Rodney. He became a later builder over in my development in Afton Village, but Rodney wasn't involved in any way in that. And Mike Johnson and I and Anita were the developers of that property.
And did he ask you? He asked you about that recently?
I talked to him recently and was giving him sort of the background, and at no point did I say that we didn't donate that property. I don't know where he got that.
Good.
Yeah, because he was looking at some dates, and he said that, if you look at the deed, the date wasn't until after the neighborhood was built, so...
Well, the neighborhood was built in two parts. Mike and Anita started Hobbs Hill, and before I was involved, and they invited me to come in. We had worked together on another project down at Cornelius, and so when I got involved, there was still a lot of the vacancy at the top of Julia and whatever the cross street is up
Hobbs.
there. For Mark, I think his name was Mark Ashton, and lived in that corner house, that white house, the Charleston-looking house. I designed that house.
That's
We
Eric
built it.
Giordano's house.
So we built that, and then the houses behind that, and then the houses up on Armour Street. I designed those, and we built that, and then I started Afton Village shortly thereafter, and Mike finished out what was done there.
Okay. Yeah, and that buffer land, it connected to the land, which is known as the Klon's property, but the town owned that land with the pond.
Right. That was property that they had considered developing way back then, but with the pond and just sort of the asset of that, it just didn't make sense for us to get involved in that. So,
Sure.
It was bounced around at that point, but it was not really considered a serious development process.
But did they talk about how that connecting to that land that might be preserved would kind of
well, that
be
was the whole
connectivity?
idea, because the town owned that property, and it was a pretty nice swath of green that ran from there all the way to the railroad tracks,
Yep.
I believe.
Yep.
I mean, I haven't worked over here in years, so I'm going back to the early 90s when all this was taking place, but my recollection is that was on both sides of the road, because I think you can see, can't you see Ingersoll Rand sort of through the woods there too? And that was all pretty pristine.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was Ralph Klantz's grandma's property.
Yeah.
And then they cut Beatty through, but so I appreciate you speaking up.
Sure.
I really do appreciate it. Thank you.